Before we get started, thank you so much to Monday.com for sponsoring today's video. So while I don't work professionally as a software engineer anymore, products like Monday.com really help me to stay organized with all the things that I have going on. Monday.com is an online work OS platform where teams can create custom workflows in minutes to run their project processes and everyday work. And it's a really exciting time because the Monday Apps framework allows any developer to create a custom framework on top of Monday.com. The Monday Apps Marketplace just launched in October, and so if you build an app on their platform, then hundreds of thousands of organizations using Monday can use your app. And because it's pretty dang new, you can also be one of the first Monday app developers. And because of first mover's advantage, your app can be the go-to in the category that you choose to build in. And developing on the framework is intuitive, and they even have an API playground to allow you to build apps really quickly and easily. So register to Monday.com's app challenge for a chance to win a Tesla. Last day of submission is May 3rd. Thank you to Monday for sponsoring, and now let's get back to the video. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name's Mayuko, and welcome back to my channel. Today is like a reflections video about how I kind of haven't coded in like a whole year. March kind of marks 1 year of stepping like full-time into content creation and leaving this kind of software engineering career on pause. And I was trying to figure out what video to make this time, and I was like, I should probably make a technical video because I haven't done that in a while. But then every time that I like went into the research part of it, I was like, I really don't want to though. Like I really don't want to, because again, I haven't coded professionally in a whole year, so I'm not sure if I'm allowed to talk about this. And then I was like, this is what I should make my video about. And so today I've gathered a couple of thoughts. They're gonna be kind of like stream of consciousness a little bit, where I talk pretty open and honestly to you about what it's been like to not really have coded for a year. This video requires me to be really vulnerable, which means that I've been kind of procrastinating it because it's hard to be really vulnerable on topics like this. So please be kind in the comments. And I guess just to kind of give you like a look ahead, there's good news and bad news, I guess. There's things that I didn't realize about myself after having not coded for a year that are good, and there's also bad things and feelings and realizations that come with it as well. So I'm gonna talk about all of that, and this is just like my own opinion, my own experiences as usual on this channel, so this isn't meant to generalize anybody's experience, but I wanted to talk about what's been going on in here. I'm gonna start with the bad news first and then end on the good news, because I do think there is like a silver lining to all of this. So the bad news is, I feel like weekly, I have feelings about not being legit enough as a software engineer. I feel very imposter-y, like the feelings of imposter syndrome that I thought might be behind me, at least the really strong feelings of imposter syndrome, are very much alive and well in my brain. And I think specifically, it's like in Silicon Valley, a lot of what your identity is related to your work. Like you go to a party, one of the first things that you ask, even if it's not a work-related party, is just like, oh, so what do you do? Or like, where do you work? And so it's very career focused and career oriented in the Valley. And so I think like I was part of that world, and so I felt like being a software engineer, being an iOS developer, coding as my 9 to 5 was a really like strong part of my identity, I guess. Like that's just how I defined myself often. Nowadays, that's not the case, because maybe you've seen in some of my videos or the content that I create that I describe myself in a very different way now. I still say that I'm a software engineer, but I'm also a content creator. I'm a Japanese and American person, child of immigrants, like wife, mother to 2 dogs, like there's a lot of other parts, but in the past, the whole software engineer part was kind of just like, that is who I was. So yeah, because of that, I think like when I stopped working professionally as a software engineer, it was a lot of just like, if I'm not working as a software engineer, then like, what does that mean? Like, who am I anymore? Because you know what? Leave it to me, Mayuko, for having an identity crisis anytime anything about me changes. And yeah, honestly, I feel this like often because of the content that I choose to create and the communities that I'm a part of. I'm often reminded by others or by myself that I don't code professionally anymore, and so that's not like my main thing. And so then I talk to Scott about it usually on our evening walks, because I'm just like, Scott, what like authority do I have in talking about technology and coding and career and stuff if that's not what I'm currently doing right now? In fact, anytime like a tech YouTuber leaves their job or they change roles to something other than software engineering, I've heard that it's like a pretty common sentiment that it's just like, am I gonna still seem legitimate and real and relatable and just like valuable, valid to my YouTube audience or whatever audience if I'm not doing that right now as a job. And when I first left my job, I was kind of just like, yeah, because I still have so much stuff in my brain, like all the knowledge and the skills that I built are not for nothing, like it's still there. And so yeah, I think at the beginning it was fine, but now it's a year later, and so if anything, it's just like the rift between software engineering and me just only grows bigger. And so when I really think about like what is it about that rift that makes me so uncomfortable, is that it's just fear. And I think the fear specifically is because a lot of the conversation or sentiment around software engineering is that if you leave, then you become rusty or you become outdated or out of touch or something like that. And so I just feel a lot of fear that that's gonna be who I am, like I'm gonna be out of touch and the stuff that I create and the stuff that I do and the person that I am is no longer gonna be valid. And so every time I like kind of venture back into coding technical land, it's just a lot of fear, because it's just like, oh right, I left this entire life on pause to do what I wanted to do. It's just scary. Like, what if I go back and they don't accept me? What if I go back and my skills have actually gotten worse or something like that? So my confidence just generally is very down. But like, granted, when I like realistically think about it and logically think about it, like, do I think that I could go back to software engineering if I wanted to and if I really tried? Like, yeah, I think so. I realized that the amount of time that I spent in tech, all the stuff that I know is really like never gonna go away. Like, all of that is gonna be a strong part of who I am. So yeah, I think remembering that like kind of just makes me check that it's just like, yeah, okay, so you're not coding professionally anymore. Like, what does that mean? Well, when you do go back to coding, maybe it means that you have to Google a little bit more because you're rusty and you don't remember certain words or phrases or how to do things. But once you look at that, it kind of like brings this flood of memories back. So it's not impossible, I guess. And also, like, it's not like I've coded 0 lines in this last year. I've done a couple of personal projects, dabbled here and there. It's just like I don't do it as frequently as I used to, and it's not like my main skill or main trade anymore. And a question comes up often in my mind too of like, well, I don't know, if I'm so afraid of leaving coding, does that mean that I want to go back to coding? And honestly, I don't know. Like, I don't have a definitive answer for that right now. I'm like, do I want to go into coding? Maybe you want to go into something completely different? I just have no answers, and I think that's okay. Even though sometimes I'm scared that I don't even have an answer to that, honestly. So yeah, it's just been a lot of imposter syndrome and thinking about what you all think of me and hoping that the stuff that I'm talking about still makes sense and that I'm still like valued, I guess, because when you work so hard at a career to feel valid and valued by an entire industry and then you leave that behind, oh baby, is it scary. And frankly, it's given me some perspective, I think, too, because there are a lot of people who leave tech and then come back for whatever reason. Maybe they take a sabbatical for a year, maybe they have to care for a loved one, maybe they go on maternity leave and then they quit their job, be a full-time mom or full-time dad for a while, and then they come back into the industry. And there is kind of like this, I think, tech retention issue, especially in women, in that as time goes on within someone's career, they're less likely to stick with tech. Like, there's a leaky bucket problem. And so when I think about all the feelings that I have about going back into coding, technology in general, the tech industry, I'm like, yeah, I don't know, like, I get it. It's scary. It's really scary. So yeah, it's been a lot of second guessing. I'm very like, I don't know, like the whole, I was never like a really tech heavy or coding channel to begin with. My stuff has been very light touch tech and kind of overall career related stuff, and I try to bring value in that way because there are so many other great channels that explain coding and do tutorials and stuff, and I think they're incredible. And I guess like I think that those are filling a gap that I can never satisfy in the way that they are, and so I'd rather work on other things. And frankly, it's just I'm not interested in making coding tutorials. It's just not what excites me about content creation, rather making this kind of stuff about putting my feelings on the internet and showing you the raw realness of being human and being the person that I am, and hope that you relate and find value or advice or something like that. So even that, as I keep going on in content creation, I'm just gonna have been further away from tech for longer and longer. So does that mean that I'm gonna keep making tech content? Who knows, you know? I feel like I constantly have to challenge. In order to be able to give tech advice, you have to be actively working in tech, but I don't actually think that has to be true either. I don't know. I guess it's just like the imposter syndrome is very real. It's been a rough journey. It's constantly like doubting myself for the path that I've taken and being scared of everything. Every time I look at code, or the other day I opened delete code and I noped out of there so fast because I was just like, this just reminds me of all the things that I've forgotten. And that hurts me because, I don't know, being reminded that time is passing and that your brain is not perfect and that you're forgetting things can be scary. But also, I do have the confidence that I could figure it out if I wanted to. That's kind of the silver lining. And speaking of silver linings, let's get into like the pros, which really are kind of more like, through being able to leave tech and not work professionally as a software engineer, here are other things that I've learned as a result. And the one thing that has really surprised me about not working as a software engineer professionally for a year is that all of the other skills related to software engineering that aren't coding are super transferable skills in my current role. I feel like it's really similar to like playing one sport for most of your life and then switching to another sport. I know sport analogies are not like the best thing, but just like hang in there with me. So basically, in that first sport that you do, if you build up the muscle, the endurance, you get the flexibility in your body to be able to do that sport, then in that second sport, you still have this like baseline of just like being able to move and do stuff with your body, but you're just gonna use and flex a different set of muscles. And those muscles are probably ones that you built up in the first sport, and if anything, you're gonna work on a completely different body part. Like maybe this second sport, you're more likely to use like your leg muscles and stuff, and you're maybe not gonna flex like your arm muscles as much or something. So that's kind of what it feels like. It's like all the stuff that I learned as a software engineer, I've actually taken with me, and certain parts of the skills that I learned are now just being flexed more or less. And so coding specifically is one of the ones that I use way less, which is what feeds the imposter syndrome and scares me a little bit. But I think when I get really scared, I remind myself that, yeah, but look at all these other skills that you've been able to develop on top of your existing software engineering skills that weren't coding. And frankly, like when I thought about leaving my job, these are the skills that I wanted to build. And so it's kind of cool to look back and be like, yeah, I did that. So I use that as a way to like boost my confidence sometimes. Literally, if you think about like what are the skills of a software engineer, I feel like generally, colloquially, people divide them into hard skills and soft skills, when in fact there's actually way more buckets than just that, in my opinion. Like the ability, for instance, to be able to read technical documentation and make sense of it is a very important software engineering skill, especially as you get more senior and there aren't answers of Stack Overflow things everywhere. So that's one thing, especially when I'm working with editing software, when I'm like reading about anything new that is written by academia or anyone like that. Being able to get information that way, I think, is a really important part of my job currently. Being able to Google everything, like getting really good at Googling, is something that I developed as a software engineer. And literally like being my own boss and like not really having like somebody else who could do my job means that I'm the only person sometimes who can figure out how to do what I want to do, which means it's a lot of Googling. Another skill that I've been really thankful for that I use in my day-to-day is just like project planning and project management. Because I'm not sure if you know this, but like in content creation, everything is like a project. A video is a project. There's multiple steps to get it from conceptualization to like pushing to prod, basically, which is YouTube, as well as just like making newsletters, going live on Twitch. Like there's so many things to do all the time. And because I'm my own boss, a lot of the time I'm doing all of it. And so in order to stay organized, literally I still do sprints. I still run my day and work in sprints and tasks and prioritize all the lists of tasks and stuff. And that's a very like, I brought that exactly from Scrum days, you know? One other really important skill that I learned as a software engineer that I use often is my collaboration skills. Like, even though I work for myself, by myself, I still collaborate with many people. Granted, it's not like we all work for the same company or something, and it's a lot of like strangers on the internet, but it's all about just like getting people to work on something with you to make something, and that's basically software engineering and coding. So yeah, I think the Silicon Valley mentality has followed me in being organized in collaboration. So it's like setting up meetings well in advance, creating agendas for the meetings, creating action items for those meetings, following up in those meetings, trying to find alignment and a common ground in communication with another person whose background you have no idea about. And related to that is like writing good documentation for other people to read, writing good emails, being able to manage like good relationships and foster good relationships with collaborators. All of that are lessons that I learned as a software engineer. Kind of like how, hey, if I'm gonna do you a favor, I kind of expect at some point for you to do me a favor. Like, all of that stuff is like so incredibly important in content creation. And so that's been really interesting. Oh, and one other thing that's been super helpful is literally like debugging. Like, I still debug in my day-to-day pretty often, especially when Premiere Pro is being like super difficult to work with, or when I'm trying to get down to the bottom of any sort of issue, whether that be like with merch or with YouTube or with any technology ever, because being a content creator still means using a lot of digital products, just the building blocks are different. So yeah, I think what I learned from not coding professionally for a full year is that it's just required me to have a different perspective about myself, my work, my skills, my confidence. It wasn't easy, but honestly, everything considered, I'm happy that I did what I did. And frankly, it's quite scary to post a video on the internet about this because I am really worried about what people think. And so I hope that you'll still follow along with me in my journey and subscribe to my channel, because I don't know, I still feel like there's a lot of other things to talk about within the world of tech that isn't just coding. To me, coding is a tool. It's not the end-all be-all of everything. It's just a tool, similar to like how a saw is to a carpenter. It's one tool that you use to get what you want done. And it does unlock a lot of capabilities because it's cool and ever evolving and a lot of people are working on it, but there is just so much more to the world of tech that I want to talk about. So I hope you indulge me in that and you don't think of me as a complete fraud. I sure hope you don't think that. Thank you for watching my musings that come right off the top of my head. I appreciate you all for being here and watching my videos, because y'all give me purpose in the work that I do and validate that it's okay to like live your life the way that you want to, and that's very, very reassuring. So thank you all so much. Every single person who watches my videos, leaves nice comments, watches my Twitch streams, buys merch, joins my YouTube membership club, like, I feel nothing but just immense gratitude for all of you in following along in my journey. So thank you. I have big, amazing things in store this year, and I cannot wait to tell you all about them. So stay tuned. I guess like in all of this, while it's scary and everything makes me fearful usually still, because you know what, your girl has anxiety, I am still very much excited about the future and what's to come. And yeah, I don't know where I'm headed. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but I'm realizing that sometimes that's just way more exciting, and that's not a scary thing. And I'm coming around to that. All right, everybody, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.